do a little bit of beaver fleshing. So, what I like to start off with my 6-inch hardwood board here. I got the beaver I skinned out earlier, and then my preference in knife is a 12-inch knife. Make sure with beavers you want it to be razor sharp. The way that I start, this is the tail section, very thin right here, but the meat sticks a lot right along the back spine. So the way that I start in the hardest area first, which is down by the tail. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start with just a little cross-cutting action. Now the key to this is the pressure that I have on the knife is actually into the board. It's not down like this. You don't ever want to tilt the blade up, you'll cut right through. So I'm pushing and pulling in. And then I'm just doing a little bit of a cross-cutting action, and I'm going to just work it down until I get to the hide. Right? And don't start up here and try to push it all the way down. You got a chance of bundling the fur up like that, which is where you'll cut through. So just start off, move it up a little bit, get it clean, and you'll see where the hide is. Get it down to that nice white flesh. That's how we want to get it. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to move right up about a third of the way up the pelt, and then I'll work my way out. I'll try to just kind of watch what I'm doing here. I'll try to focus, because this is the critical piece here. We want to be able to get it through the fleshing process where it's completely fleshed without any holes in the market pelt. So more patience is definitely better than less. If you start finding where the blade stops catching, what you got is a little cartilage underneath here. It's lifting the blade up. Kind of get it down to the skin. The other thing you want to make sure you do, work in the center 2 or 3 inches of the board. Don't work on the right or left side. Once you start getting one way or the other, you run the risk of cutting through. This is where there's some things you can't do anything about. This is spring season, so they're starting to breed. As you remove the meat, you'll start to see where they got some breeding bites, where they just like to beat up on each other. Can't do anything about that. Just try not to put any of your own marks in the pelt. The other thing that's worth noting, if you trap with conibars in particular, the way that you have the trigger set can determine whether or not you get these marks in your pelt. Generally speaking, you want to have the triggers on the bottom on a 330 or a 220 or 160, because then when it closes, this is a trap mark, or this is what a trap mark looks like. It'll come up and it'll hit them in the belly. So that mark would be in the belly, normally where you cut it, outside the market fur. If you have the triggers on the top, it's going to come right down in the middle of the back, cause a bruise right in the center of your pelt. So, little trapping tip there. Some setups you don't really have a choice, but most of the time, if you can avoid it, just keep the triggers on the bottom. So the fat on the side of a beaver generally isn't an issue. It likes to roll right off. You see, so there's almost no pressure right here. And I'll come down lengthwise, clear the blade, and get it nice and clean all the way to the edge. That's important, because it makes your life a lot easier when you come back to board it or hook it. Now, on the arms, this is the hind leg. You can either come in and really gently work that fat back like this, right? Or, you see I'm just kind of hooking it. You can even use the back of the the back of the fleshing knife. Or I usually work it up so it's up on the leg like that. Look around the edge. Maybe I get a little bit that underneath the armpit here. Just kind of scrape it like you would a muskrat scraper. And I'll come back later with the scissors. That way I don't run the risk of enlarging the leg hole. Go to the other side when I start. Make sure the leg's facing out. And then same thing, a little cross-cutting action. Get up along that edge there. You see there's a breeding mark. Right there you can see kind of what they look like. You see where their teeth went in. Nothing you can do about that, but and a lot of times they'll be in that area right above the tail. They come up behind each other and bite each other. Just be careful around it. Slow down a second and try not to enlarge it. Can't do anything about the fact that it's there. It just is. It is what it is, you know. So I'll actually leave some of the fat around it. Come back with the scissors and trim it up. You'll find a lot of that if you do any of the spring beaver trapping, where they're starting to breed and where they're getting ready to kick out the younger beavers, because they don't necessarily send them in an eviction notice. They bite them in their rear end until they leave. So gently go around that leg, get it all up onto the leg. This was probably, this beaver here was pretty good, about a 35 pounder. I think it might have been a lone male that was trying to move in on maybe a female in one of the ponds or something. Caught a lot of beavers out of that pond and a lot of adults, so it's probably why he's got some bites in him. Trying to hone in on somebody else's territory. Alright, get it down around the leg, pull that clear, and then I move it down about another quarter, and do the same thing. Start in the center, do one little swipe to kind of straighten it out, a little cross-cut action to get down to the skin. You can see there's another bite. Kind of beat up. Being really careful here. As long as you don't extend those holes, should be okay. You can get away with maybe an SLT or a grade 1, even with some bites in there. I don't tend to stress about it. I get my beavers. Usually what I found is that when you send beavers to auction, if you send 20 beavers to auction, you're going to have about 15 different lots where they break down different sizes, different colors, different grades. You might even have 20, but you're definitely not going to have them all pop into the same lot. It's just the nature of the beast. Just keep working it down. Now what I want is, sorry about that, I want to try to keep it with the grain. So once I get to about halfway, the hide's going to want to roll on me left and right. So then I'm going to just kind of clean it up here. You can see another big bite here. If you want to be able to do beavers in any reasonable amount of time, I guess, you need to make sure this knife is razor sharp. But with that comes a little bit of an issue. You want to make sure that you're careful and you do not tilt that blade up. If I tilt this blade up, I'm going right through because it's sharp as a razor. Usually before I get rolling on some beavers, I'll sit there and I'll sharpen my blade. You know, I'll make sure it's good and sharp. Then get a couple beavers out of it and sharpen up again and do a couple more. Gently just kind of scrape the edge. You want to have it, you really want to get it so the edge of the hide's like that. Nice and clean right to the edge. Alright, so I get about halfway. Turn the beaver around. Now we got the head facing down. Do the same thing. And up here, there's very little fat on the head. You just got the ears and the nose and the cheeks and all that. So you're going to be doing some shearing action. I shear off the cartilage on the ears. Get it honed down to where maybe you got a 1/16 inch of meat, and that's good. Meat's not the issue. Fleshing's almost a misstatement, because really what you're doing is you're defatting the pelt. The meat actually will dry up within reason. I mean, there's the big pieces of meat that you really don't want in there. But a little bit of fat can taint the hide. So it's really about getting the fat down and honing the pelt down to the point where it can dry evenly and fast. Get those cheeks. I'm going to shear off. There's a bunch of membrane underneath the whiskers. And work some of this other face meat down. Get behind the eyelid there. Up to the nose. The nose itself, I shear off, because that allows me to get rid of the front lips. And now it's pretty thin, so it'll dry out good. And actually, when I come in to board it, that gets me into a little bit heavier skin, which likes to take the nails better. So probably enough on the face. Come back here to the shoulders. Shear up the ear there. Cartilage is the same thing as fat. It doesn't like to dry. So try to remove it whenever possible. That's why you remove the cartilage of predators. It doesn't spoil the hair. See, I found that by actually leaving quite a bit of fat on there when I skin, it kind of starts rolling ahead of itself, and actually makes it a little easier to get it off the hide. Up here, front leg, the side fat, like I said before, this loves to come off. It rolls right off nice and easy. It's more pushing action. Get it up to that leg, roll it over, clean to the edge. Get all this heavy meat off, then I'll come back and look at that. Same thing, come down the edge. You don't want to have to reach. Keep it into your power zone where you have strength and control, which is about a 12-inch window. And you won't run into an issue with cutting through. When you start to try to reach or you start to push it because you're getting frustrated, that you cut through. And especially on this one's had its own issues. It looks like it got the crap pounded out of it. So you gotta be careful on these. It's gonna do pretty good, considering it's got half a dozen bites in it. The bites, I'm keeping the bites small. So when it dries up, you won't physically be able to see it. Come down the edge. A little scraping action. You take an extra 3-4 minutes here to get it nice and clean right to the edge. It'll dry 2 or 3 days quicker. A properly fleshed beaver should really dry. If it's I dry everything down here actually cool, about 65 degrees, but I keep the humidity down to like 40%. Very, very dry. So that way I don't get any papery pelts when I'm done. Some pelts doesn't matter. Beavers are actually one of those you could dry them at 100 degrees if you wanted to. But nice. And do it here, just pull it into the board. Do a quick scrape, make sure, see if I got any other fat there. Slide it to the other side. I got this big breeding bite in the center. Probably the worst place to have it, but I'm going to see what I can do about keeping it as big as it is, not making it worse. Yeah. I'll let you take a peek at that. You can actually see where the 2 teeth went in. And that's something that you have no control over. That's just the way the beaver is when you catch it. You just need to try to get the highest grade you can, given the beaver that you're dealt, or fox, or whatever. Getting into the easy stuff now. Get that all cleaned up. Another breeding bite. Holy cow. Same thing. This one's not too bad. That one actually wasn't a breeding bite. It was, who knows, cancer. That's an old one from last year. All in all, I think this beaver couldn't take a hint. Alright, get it right to the edge there. Nice and clean. You can kind of hear it. If you do enough, you hear kind of almost like the sound of you rubbing your hand over a pair of jeans. So, normally I don't have the camera in this close, but I wanted to make sure you could see it. I apologize for bumping into it. Alright. Got one breeder bite there. There's the arm. Pull that out. Now you can take and go up here. Pull it up to the top of the board. And actually get it out to the edge, nice and clean. One more on this edge. And just leave that stuff up on the arm. I'll trim that off here in a second. It's really important to get all that fat off, because the fat and the muscle tissue kind of bind up the pelt. If you get them really well fleshed, they're going to stretch bigger, which is important, obviously, because beavers are holes and size. So given this one's got some breeder holes in it, and there's not a dang thing I can do about it, I want to make sure that at least I can get the best size possible, because the reality is an SLT or a grade 2XL gets a lot more than a grade 2 1XL. So you can see, I get this up here, you can see the breeder marks where they bite in there. Real common. This one's a little older. Real common in the spring when you're dealing with breeding beavers. So do a little bit more cleaning here, and then I'm going to go grab my scissors and I'll show you how I finished up here. Not going to do too much around the hole. That won't turn this here for sure. Get all this out to the edge. Alright, see where we're at right now. Board. Alright. Good. Alright, so I'll grab my scissors and we'll finish her up. Alright, got my scissors. The way I do the legs, to avoid, this is a nice real tight hole, and actually when it dries it'll only be about that big, so I want to kind of maintain that. What I do with the scissors is kind of like cutting wrapping paper. You get up around the arms there, it comes right off, but I got a lot more control with the scissors. So I'll come in and I'll just do a quick removal with a pair of scissors here. You see, get it right down to the skin. For some reason the front legs tend to want to tear through more so than the hind legs, so I actually leave a pretty good piece of meat there. If you find, like this one I could have probably been a little bit more aggressive with, you can actually put the arm on the end of the board like that, and just pick up your knife, gently roll it back. But even here you don't want to put too much pressure because it'll open up. Find you got a little too much there. Just keep rolling it around like this. I got the stuff nice and clean up around the arm. I just needed to get a little bit more out of the armpit. That's actually more like cartilage there. Come up around that bite. Looks good. Next one. Go to the other arm. This one looking pretty clean. Just a little fat up around the edge, so I'll take my scissors here. Just trim it. Find any pieces like that that are sticking up or around the eyeballs. Sometimes I'll do it just to prevent expanding the holes. Get some down here. Do a quick check of the edge. Alright. Flip it over, look at the hind legs. This is where I had that big bite mark and I didn't want to push it. So I'll come up to the edge of the bite. Just kind of trim it up a little bit. It's actually not too bad. Get to the hind leg. Trim that around. There we go. A little bit of fat's not bad. Actually, I was told by a gentleman that grades the furs that a little bit of the oil protects the pelt. A lot of oil costs you money, so kind of a fine line between love and hate. Usually beavers are, you're gonna a hard time, although I've done it a couple of times, of overfleshing a beaver. I've had some that were basically bone dry. Didn't make a whole lot of difference in it, but alright, double check the edge, especially down here by where the tail is. You'll usually have a little bit heavier fat. Get that trimmed up, and we're good to go. Fleshed out. Got a little bit of, you can do a little dressing if you want, clean out some of that meat, and this one's ready to rock and roll. Put that on a board. So hope that was helpful. More to come.